Please give a big Steel City welcome for Richard Dreyfuss. Welcome.
Welcome yourself.
All right, welcome me. Okay. He tells me what to do. Thank you so much for joining us here today.
My pleasure.
Yeah, appreciate using the mic. They can kind of hear you in the back that way. Have you been here in Pittsburgh before?
I have been, but I've never done a Q&A. So I've never met the real Pittsburghians.
There's a lot of realness in this crowd. Have you been enjoying the con?
Yeah. Actually, the people are really...
I think you might have given it too much, Richard. Here, try this one.
There we go.
All right. I'm going to save the DNA on that one. All right. So we do have some people waiting to ask you some questions, but I have a question of my own. You remember you were in that movie, little flick with sharks, Jaws? You remember that one? Were you familiar with the book prior to getting cast?
I'm not familiar with the book prior, but when Steven Spielberg called me to ask me to have lunch with him and talk about the movie, he said, "Don't read the book." And I said, "I'm a director's actor." So I've never read the book right up until this moment.
Okay.
Yeah. Never read it. Is it good?
It is a good book, and let's say your character's relationship with the sheriff's wife, little different.
Oh yes, I heard that. I've heard that.
All right, we have some fine folks over here waiting to ask you some questions. Are you ready? Are you prepared?
I'm ready.
All right.
About the truth.
I don't know if you can see me. I hope you can. Welcome. Questions I have really center around Jaws and Mr. Holland's Opus. For Jaws, when you're kind of going off on Robert Shaw, what was that like? Was that fun for you?
When Robert and I squared off or something? Like,
yeah, on the boat. Like when he's, trying to wrangle in the shark.
Here's the deal. Robert and I never had a feud. Robert and I were best buds. And 25 or 30 years after the film was done and out, this rumor began to spread that there had been a feud. And there had never been a feud. And it pissed me off, really, because Robert was dead. And it was completely unfair. And he was the largest personality I've ever met. And I was astounded and complimented that we were actually in the same film. So I found out that it was made up just to sell books and stuff. So I went and made it my business to put it to death. And I did my best. So anytime you ever hear that Richard and Robert didn't get along, you have the right to urinate on their feet.
Okay, I get that. And for Mr. Holland's Opus, that covered a lot of, time periods, on there. Are you musically inclined? Do you have an interest in music? And if so, what instrument, if any?
I don't have an interest in that kind of music. I do own the patent for visual music, which has not yet happened in the world, but I own it anyway. And I will tell you that, how do you say this? I admire that character more than any other character I've ever played. And he's the best as a teacher, as a father, as a musician, and as a musical maven. And there's a great story about the man who wrote the script. He was in a traffic jam, and he was stuck, couldn't get in, couldn't get out, and a cop was walking by, and he said to the cop, "What's going on up there?" And he said, "Oh, some people are striking." He said, "Who?" And the cop said, "Teachers." And the writer looked at the cop, managed to squeeze his car out and around and back home, and wrote the script to Mr. Holland in 2 weeks because he had been reminded of how much he owed them. And they are the largest contributor to our moral character than anyone on earth.
Very true, very true. All right, another question here.
Speaking of contributing to moral character, just two-part. What was it like doing the voice of Moses for the Word of Promise Bible series? And also, what was it like playing Alexander Haig in the day Reagan was shot?
Two very different answers. Moses was fine, but when I read the script, they had 2 lines in it. And I said to them, the pastor from Missouri who was in charge of the whole thing, I said, Moses didn't say that. And he said, yes, he did. I said, no, he didn't, and I won't say it. And we went back and forth, and finally I said, look, let me call my rabbi. And I called my rabbi, who was the head of Hillel. And I said, did he say it? And the rabbi said, no, he didn't. And we put it to bed. The line was, don't forget to kill all the innocent children. And I said he didn't say that. And it didn't take, a neurosurgeon to figure that out. And then there came the second line. And the second line was just like the first. And I said, again, I called my rabbi, and he said, sit down, Richard. He said it. And I freaked out, because the second line was, don't forget that the people you're about to kill have not done anything wrong. And as a proud Jew, to say I was shocked wasn't even to begin. But I said that line during the taping. And then I turned to him, the pastor, and I said, Pastor, I don't know if you're aware of this, but I've had a major revelatory experience while shooting this. And I'll tell you that I will never, ever, ever go to a temple and do Jewish rituals. Ever. And I've not done it since. I'm still a proud Jew, but it's a cultural thing, and I won't say that. I think it's disgraceful. And the original Aramaic that the Bible was written in supports what my rabbi said, and I had to eat my own words. So that's the real answer. Okay?
Thank you.
You all understand what I just said? Okay, if someone told you that, Jesus of Nazareth was in favor of massacring the Romans, you'd say, hold it a second.
Richard, if you could hold the microphone a little closer to your mouth, some people are having a hard time hearing. Just not in the mouth.
Let's see what happens now.
That's perfect. Perfect.
Okay.
All right.
Let's go to another question.
Here's the next question.
Some people in here might know the answer to this, but know a lot of fans, and half of them believe one thing, half believe the other. This is a simple one. But in Jaws, the nighttime scene where there's a shooting star scene, was that actually caught as a shooting star, or was it digitally added later, if you know? And also, when you were climbing up the ladder there, mad at Quint, was that improvised or scripted, the faces and the arm thrust and all that?
That was improvised, and yeah, that was improvised. The first part of the question, would you repeat it?
The shooting star, if it was
Shooting
real.
star. Okay, the real answer is I don't remember. I have answered, in the course of my career, I have answered, yeah, it was a fake and we put it in, or no, it wasn't a fake, it was real. And now, God knows, I was 26 years old when we shot it, and I wouldn't remember at all. And I'm 75 now, so I'm actually, I don't even remember that I'm 75. And you think I'm kidding. Okay, go ahead.
All right.
I was wondering, what's your favorite movie you've worked on? And then just what's your favorite movie or television show in general?
I don't have a favorite movie that I've worked on. I've done about 60 films, and I could honestly say that I love them all except maybe 2, and I will never tell you which ones they were. And so that's that. Do I have a favorite film in the world? No, I have a list of about 100, and I mean that. I mean, you can't really compare Citizen Kane and Clint Eastwood's The Unforgiven. And that film is an astounding film. Astounding. And it's gorgeously written and brilliantly played. And if you haven't seen it, you should go right now. Well, wait till the end of this hour and go. That's it.
All right, excellent. Next question.
Hello, Richard. Wonderful to have you with us. So yeah,
Thank you.
Oh, what? You're welcome. Yeah. So just sorry. All right. So yeah. So the one question I've always wanted to ask you, Richard, is what was your experience like working with director Henry Selick on voicing the centipede in James and the Giant Peach?
It's amazing. I would never even have remembered his name, only because I didn't know that when you do recorded voices for animation, you're working alone. There's no one else there, no other actors, and if there's a director, he's not in the room. He's listening on headphones, and he never said anything to me, so I have no idea.
So you must have done a good job.
All right,
Not really,
this is for
because
the
they
old-
never asked me to do it again, so maybe I did a bad job. I don't know.
All right, this is for the older generation out there. So when you did Jaws, was there a scene that you were scared of? I know, right? I'm talking with my hands.
Was there a scene that I was scared of?
Right. Like, was there, like, when Jaws came out, that animatronics video came out for the very first time, we as an audience stood there and went, took that big step back breath. Like, was there a scene that Steven Spielberg got you in that really took you and you felt that blood pressure, all those feelings?
Nah.
Oh, okay.
I know. I watched your face, and I knew I was building you up to a major disappointment. No, when you're an actor in a movie, you experience it in a completely different way than an audience. And I remember, though, that after the film was finished, I went to the first public screening, and I said to Stephen, I'm going to go sit up in the balcony with the regular people. And I went up, and I was the only white face in the entire balcony, and that film scared the living crap out of me. And I'm not kidding. That movie scared me as if I didn't know the next scene. And it just wiped me out. And then I developed a habit of going to the theater and watching the audience. And I have a friend who was dating at that time a woman who was a high caste Hindu Brahmin major Eastern type with a purple boop right there. And she was the most aristocratic, the most naturally graceful, the most amazingly natural, high-class Brahmin. And I saw her go into the theater, and I decided that I was going to wait to see what she looked like when she came out. And sure enough, she was a dribbling wreck. And it was so satisfying to see that she was a puddle of terror. And it was fabulous. So,
Awesome. Thank you.
Hi, Richard. Thank you for for your Academy Award winning The Goodbye Girl. We watched that many, many times, and also for your nomination for Mr. Holland's Opus. My question is, Will Wheaton was here, and he said his favorite movie that he was in was Stand By Me, and he said he loved your voiceover. So how was it, doing the voiceover and just spending time on that film?
well, actually, you underlined the correct phrase. I spent no time on that film. And my friend who I grew up with was Rob Reiner, the director. And he asked me to voice that character. It took me about 2 hours. And I was alone with a mic. And then the film came out, and I got, I don't know, a gazillion comments about how great my voice was. But I had no sense of being in the film, of being a part of that ensemble, because I wasn't. And I just did it as a favor to Rob, and the film itself stands up so well, and he drew a picture of the childhood of young boys so well that it made everyone think we were all in it together. But no, it was after he cut the film into the film he wanted to see that I stepped in for 2 hours and did the voice. And it was not something that I felt any ownership of.
It was a great cherry on top.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he knew how to get a joke out of Pez. That was great. Listen, I know you may not be interested in this, but I retired in 2004, and I went to Oxford University because I recognized that we were in a very, very large problem, and we no longer taught civics. We no longer taught the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. We denied that there was anything special about our government, and we have then participated in the decay of that government and of our society. It has become a joke compared to what it had been. I don't care whether you're a Republican or a Democrat. I don't care. But if you haven't been taught about the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, you have not been taught. what it is to be an American. And I wrote a book about this. And I would hope that there's more in your head of interest about that than there is about movies. Not that I put them down. I love what I do for a living. I love it. And I do it as much as I possibly can. But I didn't stop doing that and go to Oxford because I was bored. I did it because I was frightened to death that we were in the last stage of the existence of the United States. And I fear that more than anything else. So if you happen to have a question that deals with that, I would be more than happy to answer it. And I would hope that you might find that of as much interest to you and your children as it is to me and mine. So I'm just saying it, and you're not obligated, except you are. Okay, I'll take anything else.
And we have another question. I can't be sure what it's about, but
Jaws. Mr. Dreyfuss, thank you for being great. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
The first scary movie I ever went to was Jaws. I was 6. And at the very end, we thought you may have died. So it terrified me as a little boy. I thought we lost you in that movie. Was there ever a chance during the editing that they would have actually killed you off in that movie?
No.
Great.
Because
I've always wondered.
they didn't give any reason. In other words, in the book, he has an affair with the lady, the wife. So it gave some kind of moral balance to kill him. The films have a strange sense of balance when it comes to right and wrong. But no. And I don't know that I would have done the film if it had been that much of a difference. Don't know.
all right, thank you. Next question.
Hi, Mr. Dreyfuss. How was it working with Bill Murray, and what about Bob? It's one of our favorite movies. And did Bill Murray drive you crazy?
Bill Murray what?
And did Bill Murray drive you crazy?
Yes. And Bill could have been more of a gentleman or nicer, or he could have been a human being. It's a choice. But we didn't get along at all, and I kept mum about this for about 15 years, and then one day I said, why am I being mum about this? And I started to tell the story. And I told the story for about 15 years. And then I said, oh, grow up. Stop. And I stopped. And you caught me just after I've decided to stop. So you can't hear the story. Nah. But he was an asshole. So anyway.
Now tell us how you really feel. Thank you. Next question.
Hi there. So you were in Postcards from the Edge, which was written by Carrie Fisher about her, struggles with substance abuse. So I know she was on set a lot. So I was hoping you could share a Carrie Fisher story with us.
Oh, boy. Are you listening? Yeah, there's one story I would share with you. She lived in, half of her life was lived in London. And I was in London for 5 or 6 years. And one day she invited me to dinner. And it was with Salman Rushdie. You know who Salman Rushdie is? He was. They leveled a death sentence against him. The entire religion of Islam was. They were given allowance to kill him on sight. All the millions of Islamic people in the world were told that they would go to heaven if they killed Salman Rushdie. And Carrie was a pal of his. So I show up dinner one night in a restaurant, and they're sitting together in the center of the restaurant. And I thought to myself, well, either every person in this restaurant is an undercover British policeman, or this guy has more balls than anyone I've ever met. And I came to the table, and I was clearly a bit wary. And finally, I said, "Can I ask you what's going on here? I thought you have this death sentence thing." And Carrie and Salman Rushdie burst into laughter. and he said, "Oh, that's over. That's over. They withdrew it." And I said, "And are you sure that everyone heard it? Because there are billions of Islamic people in the world, and it could have been that someone had been on the phone." And, And he said at the time, "No problem, no problem." And if any one of you reads the newspaper, you'll know that just a few weeks ago, someone jumped on a stage and tried to kill Salman with a knife by cutting out his eyes. And so I had lost touch with him myself. I didn't know whether to send him a telegram and say, "Nah, nah, 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 nah," or what. But clearly, certain people had not heard the latest bulletin about his death sentence. So
They were on the phone for a very long time. Thank you. Great question. Next.
Hi there. I have a little request first, and then I do have a political question. So I was a teenager in the 70s, went to the movie theaters for Close Encounters and for Jaws and for Goodbye Girl. And you and Marsha Mason, wow, that was great. And loved you and love how you've spanned the generations. And now my son also loves you. And his favorite thing is your line in Reds about being a bad guy. And he'd love to hear you say that.
say it again.
Because I'm a bad guy.
People have funny memories. The line I said was, "I'm the bad guy." And it's now blown up into, I don't know, a Broadway musical. But that's what was said. And when they killed me at the end of the film, I immediately said, "You're making a terrible error, because you should not kill me because you're going to make a sequel and you won't have a villain." And sure enough,
there you go.
They made a sequel, but it had no villain.
You're right.
And I had no job.
And we love that movie.
Thank you.
Love so many of your movies. And my dad just adored you. He was in AFTRA in Pittsburgh because he was on radio and TV. And so, and then my mom was a teacher. And I have followed you on the political end of things and your work with SAG and other things that you have said and done. And I look around this room and I know that there are definitely people on all sides of the argument here. That not shouldn't be an argument, the discourse, right? And I know that myself, I have gone into my tribe, and I'm wondering, how do we get out of this? We all have we're all here for you, right? We all love your movies. We're all here at Comic-Con because we're fans of this type of thing. So we have commonalities, and yet all we do is fight. What are your thoughts?
First of all, in the Constitution of the United States, it applauds opposing views. It applauds debate and having different points of view. And if you just think logically of any group of people, especially a country that's 330 million in one country, no one is going to agree with everyone about anything. And that's the genius of America and the genius of our system, because we invited the poor who had been denied education of any kind forever, for 5,000 years, from the beginning of human civilization. No one had ever bothered to educate the poor because they were just cattle. And when we became an independent nation and cut ourselves off from the British, we decided that we would teach the poor, and the poor could run this whole country. And of course, the world laughed at us until we became the most powerful, the most beautiful, the most wanted, the most desired country on earth. And we have something very, very, very much to be proud of. And we've denied ourselves the pride of being Americans. Americans are people who love dissent and love opposite points of view. Americans have had that for 200 years. And in 1970, that stopped for no reason whatsoever. And I will remind you that we all know about the revolution, the American Revolution. It's very famous. It's so famous that we all know it as a revolution. So why don't we know anything about its being taken away? And they took it away in secret. And it hasn't been taught in American public schools since 1970. And they won't tell you why. So you have every right, and you have more than every right. You have an obligation to find out why we elect people to Congress and they're our bosses from then on. No. They work for us. And the Constitution of the United States makes it very clear that it does not favor one party over another. And if you look at the history of the country, you'll see that we share it 50-50 and have always done that. And now we're taught that if your neighbor disagrees with you politically, he's a traitor. Now that's not only ugly and stupid, it's no way to run a country. And it doesn't mean that one side is better than the other. They're not. But if you refuse to be the boss you are, if you refuse to take responsibility for the government that you run, you're going to get what you pay for. You're going to get what you deserve, which is shit. And I'm telling you, there's never been a worse thing that I could possibly say to you, because you are going to abandon your own children. You are going to walk away from your responsibility as parents, as citizens, and you're going to do it for no reason. You're just going to walk away because they can count on only one thing, that you're just as stupid as they think you are. And you're not. You're a hell of a lot smarter than they are. You just have to do it. And I'm not kidding, and I'm not looking for your applause. I'm telling you, when America fails, what then? What then? Because America is failing now, and it's going to hit bottom. And who's going to take over then? And who are they? And you know some of them already, but you're going to let the greatest idea for governance in the history of the human race go away. If you don't have the courage, boy, that's how afraid they are. And if you think I'm kidding, I'm not kidding. I don't believe in any conspiracies except this one. I believe that you cannot get a straight answer from the conservatives, the liberals, the TV, the editorials, the newspapers, the courts, the Congress. You can't get an answer. Try it sometimes.
Thank you so much. I'm afraid we have time.
By the way,
just...
when I say try it sometimes, I'm not kidding. Try it. Try it. Call up your representative. Call up your senator and say, why is it that we don't teach civics anymore? And I defy you to get a straight answer. If you don't get it, just imagine what your kids are going to live through.
Very true. We have time for one more question.
Okay, this is more of a comment than a question, but we spoke briefly last night. My daughter, when she was in high school, she had to do a senior project to graduate, which consisted of a research paper and an oral project. And she did hers on the importance of art and music education in public schools. And one of the sources she used for her research was Mr. Holland's Opus. And when she did her oral presentation, she used Mr. Holland's speech to the school board at the end of the movie. And I just want to thank you for bringing a very important issue to light. I don't think people realize how important music and art education is in the public schools. Both of my girls spent their entire high school in the marching band. My youngest was they both played instruments. My youngest was in dance class the whole time, from 5 years old all the way up until she graduated. They were both very deeply involved in art and music education, and they both graduated with honors. So, I think a lot of people don't realize how important it is, and they need to get on the bandwagon with that because it is very, very important.
What are you doing to my microphones?
Hello? Okay. She wasn't talking about music. She was talking about education. And you are educated when you're young because it's a waste if you're not educated until you're old. That's stupid. So remember, it's when you're young that you can learn. And it's when you're young that they have taken away the most important subject that you could possibly be learning. And that's called the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and the Declaration of Independence and the Gettysburg Address. And if you don't understand me, just watch. Just watch. Because the police are already behaving as if they're not the police. The courts are already behaving as if they're not the courts. and we're letting him do it. What is that? When was America famous for being a bunch of cowards? You ought to think about that. Anyway, you also ought to think about Jaws. Okay, any other questions? The name of my book, by the way, is...
There we go.
The name of my book is One Thought Scares Me. We teach our children what we wish them to know. And we don't teach them what we don't wish them to know. And if they've taken away the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, they don't want you to know it. How about that?
True words. You've given us much to think about. Big round of applause for Richard Dreyfuss. Thank you so much, my friend.
This is John Glover, and you are watching Fandom Spotlight. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Lionel Luther recommends it. Have some fun. Follow your fandom.